Our podcast is brought to you by Anchor. If you have not heard about Anchor, it is the easier way to make a podcast. It's free and they give you great tools and resources. Download the free Anchor app on your phone or go to anchor.fm to get started. ANCHOR. That's Anchor.
That's Anchor.
Welcome back, everyone. This is part 2 of the Kobe Bryant episode. In this part 2, we are going to talk about Kobe Bryant the person. And that there are so many achievements that Kobe Bryant did. And you might think, you mean basketball, right? But not only just basketball, but outside of the court, Kobe did a lot of achievements. So, let's get right into it. In January 26, 2020, we got the devastating news that Kobe Bryant had passed away in a tragic accident. Where were you and how hard did this hit you?
Wow. So during that time, we were actually displaced from our home, buddy. I don't know if you remember, but we had a fire in our apartment around that time. And that about 2 days prior, we had to grab a couple of things that we could grab right away, and we had to check into a hotel. We were in a hotel because there was a fire in our apartment, and it was a very stressful and a very difficult time. And I still remember to this day, we were eating at Applebee's. We were going out to Applebee's for lunch, and as I was walking in, your mother told me, "Oh my God, babe, Kobe Bryant died." And I remember feeling upset at her just saying something like that. Like I thought, how could you even at such a stressful time, how could you even say something like that unless you're like 1,000% sure? So, it was more like dismissive and more like upset at that time. And of course, my initial thought was that's not possible. That's just like TMZ or one of these crazy news people making up stories. So I start to Google it and kind of look through my phone, and I start seeing reports slowly creeping in. And I'm like, wait, is this like for real? Like, there's no way out of all the people, out of all the humans in this world, this can't be real. And then my friends, the old crew, they start putting it on the text messaging, and I'm like, oh my God, this really can't be real. I mean, they're gonna confirm that Kobe was not on board or whatever it is. And then we're at Applebee's, and every single TV monitor suddenly turned into a helicopter that had crashed. And the headline or the bulletin basically said, Kobe Bryant aboard a helicopter. And, you know, it was just my heart fell to the floor. It was it was tough. It was very tough. I couldn't it's like superheroes, when you watch
Mm-hmm.
cartoons, when you watch these superhero movies, superheroes are not supposed to die. And Kobe obviously is not like we were family members or something, but our dog is named Kobe. You've heard of Kobe your whole life since you were a baby. We have Kobe jerseys. I always, talk about how much I idolize Kobe. And as we kind of get into this part of the episode, um, what Kobe did outside the court to me was even more impressive than what he did on the court, and that's saying a lot after the very accomplished career that he had in the NBA. But as you know, I wrote a book about it over the last year, and one of the chapters was this exact same experience, just kind of reflecting on how I felt when I heard that my favorite sports icon had passed away.
Yeah, and it's crazy. It feels like It feels like Derek Jeter just died, or The Rock just died, or all these idols that people, love basically. And when Kobe Bryant passed, it was devastating, It was like saying for me, Stephen Curry had died today. And
Yeah,
you just wouldn't believe it, but once you realize it's true, it's just painful. It's really painful.
yeah, you're absolutely, that's exactly it. You're absolutely right. It was just not, it didn't feel real. And with Kobe, after he retired, and I know we're going to go through it, but after he retired, Kobe started inspiring me in completely different ways, just in ways that he was able to focus his mind on being a better family man and being a father. And obviously, what made this news even worse was that his daughter, Gianna, was also on board in that helicopter.
Yeah.
And that hit home. I have a daughter, you have a sister, and it just felt not real. To this day, it still feels like Kobe's gone. Like, no way. That's just crazy.
Yeah, and like, don't get me wrong, I didn't love Kobe as much as you did, but it was actually painful for me too, cause I grew up hearing that's the first player that I ever heard of. That's the first guy that I ever watched on YouTube. That's he got me into basketball, I think, actually, cause once I knew him, you know, I realize there's other players, and I see people talking in the news about this player. I don't know any of them. So I thought I only knew Kobe Bryant, and hey, why not give basketball a sport to like watch, And that's how I met my favorite team, my favorite player, and it's really just devastating.
Yeah, it was surreal, but you know what? That being said, that was a tragic day, but it goes to show you, I mean, from 2016 to 2020, Kobe accomplished things that people worked their entire lifetime for, and it was because of that focus that he was able to apply, which he had all 100% of it into basketball. He was able to apply it into other things, including fatherhood, and that's what was impressive. And today, you and I also want to reflect on a celebration of Kobe's life and kind of what he accomplished as a person, as a man, as an influential person, an inspiring person outside of what he did with the basketball. So let's talk a little bit about that. Tell me a bit about the accomplishments outside the court.
Well, from 2016 through 2020, Kobe had a whole other career. And this is how he first kind of started it. On March 4th, 2018, Kobe won his first Oscar for his short film, which was called Dear Basketball.
Yeah, wow. I mean, first of all, before we got to talk about Dear Basketball, that was a great short film,
Yeah.
but the man won an Oscar. I mean, there's directors, producers, actors, actresses that work their whole lives to win an Oscar, and
This guy
Kobe
just got it.
applied. Yeah, and he didn't just get it; he earned it. Kobe applied that creativity, that hard work, because you know, Dear Basketball, that was a great short film. Like it was great. And obviously, I think people probably saw it for the first time after he passed away. But when he did that film, it was like, wow, like this explains so much about why Kobe was so obsessed with basketball and what basketball meant to him. And it was a great film, and he earned an Oscar. I mean, here's 5 championship rings, an MVP, a bunch of All-Star appearances. Oh, and by the way, here's an Oscar.
I mean, in that short film, I actually want to talk about it. I think that short film, since, Kobe was trying to teach us what mentality you need to have if you want to be successful. You can't just be lazy around and just sit there and do nothing and just say, I'm going to just make it to the NBA, guys. It's that simple. No, you have to work. You have to work hard, And I think in that film, he taught us how he would dribble every day. He taught us the hard work that he would put in. in order to have a very successful basketball career. And I think he also taught us that never let your mind give up on you, let the body do. Because he gave up, basically, he retired when his body was giving up on him. I bet his mind was giving up on him when he torn the Achilles, when he had problems in '03, but he didn't let that stop him from continue to play. I think when his body was like starting to get old and starting to give up on him, like I said, that's when he decided to say, I'm leaving basketball, basically.
Yeah, and you know what's great about that film? I'm glad that that's what you take away from it because it applies to everything. It applies to life. So if you want to pass a test, if there's a very important test at school, you can't just show up to the test and expect to pass it. You know, if you want to have a great grade in that class or in that test, you've got to practice. You've got to practice when I always tell you this about, you know, getting better at sports and getting better at school. You got to practice when nobody's looking. You got to practice and work on your craft when nobody's paying attention. Because when you're in the spotlight, when you're in that basketball game, in that baseball game, that football game, when you're in that exam, when you're in that spelling bee, you've been in a couple of spelling bees, you know, it's it now feels natural to you because you've done it so much and you've put in the hard work when there was nobody there. So now that you're doing what you're supposed to do, and that applies to a career, that applies to sports, it becomes easy because of the hard work and dedication that you put behind it.
Yeah, I mean, once again, it's all about hard work, and that just shows a message to everybody, basically. Everybody out there who wants to become a baseball player, anything. Anything is basically possible.
Hey, it's the Mamba mentality, right?
Yeah.
So the Mamba mentality, that's saying it applies to everything. I mean, I've said, all right, I need Mamba mentality, and I could be hanging up a picture frame. And it's just like I need that level of focus. I could be doing work, I could be handling some job responsibilities. And Mamba mentality means so much, it's so inspiring. And it's because it just represents a certain level of focus, a certain level of dedication and hard work that applies to all parts of our lives.
Yeah. Well, before we get on to his first book and all that, I want you guys to know my dad wrote a new book which was called The Dark Days of 2020. And I have a question for you. Did you thought of that idea from Kobe Bryant of just writing a
In a
book?
way, yeah, in a way, yeah. I mean, obviously, his what happened to him in early 2020 was definitely a reason why I kind of wrote that memoir. It was just to kind of document what I was going through, what I was feeling, and obviously, kind of the respect I have for Kobe Bryant and how much he had inspired me. So yeah, to a certain extent, not because he wrote books. I think that was obviously so impressive. It was a best-selling book all over it, and there's an entire series for it. So that on top of being an Oscar-winning producer, it's just crazy. This guy could do whatever he put his mind to. It's like he put his brain that he had in basketball, he just applied it to a different part of life, and he was great at everything. And when I wrote my memoir, I dedicated a chapter to the Black Mamba because he inspired me, and the parts where he inspired me the most was in the parts outside of the basketball court. It was how he was a father. It's how he was a coach in his daughter's sports in basketball. And it was just his dedication to being the best father in the world. So the same way that he wanted to be the best basketball player in the world, he also strived to be the best father in the world. So that was very inspiring. And so yeah, to answer your question, it was definitely an inspiration to put it together my manuscript.
Yeah, and you even wrote a whole chapter. I mean, writing a whole book is like so much work. I can't even imagine it at all. I bet I'll give up like at page one. But writing a book, man, that's just like wow. That shows to you once again that anything is possible, really. If you put the mind to it, if you put the hard work to it, you could anything's possible, really.
Yeah, and listen, you could accomplish even more and even better than that. I mean, you continue to prove it time and time again. So absolutely, you're absolutely right. Anything you put your mind to, you're going to be able to accomplish, and you're going to be great at it.
Yeah. Well, on October 23rd, 2018, Kobe Bryant wrote his first book, which was called The Mamba Mentality: How I Play.
The first of many. It was interesting. So obviously I've seen that book, but the books that really interest me is the books that he wrote in the series that you have in your library.
Mm-hmm.
So those books is interesting because each book is about like an athlete or a person trying to accomplish something and kind of how they fall down and how they get back up and how they're able to overcome their challenges. And it's almost like a hidden message in those books about himself. And again, that creativity that he had was just amazing. It was just amazing.
And I bet he dedicate that to basically the hard work that you have to put in. And like each story has that one character, since I've read most of them, each character in the story always wants to become successful. And I think he wrote that because he's trying to basically tell us another, like how he was when he was young, the hard work that he wanted, how successful he really wanted to be. And I think he tried to show that here with the characters that were in this book.
Yeah, and the good thing is that a lot of those characters are also females. So what Kobe was going to accomplish in this world was going to be phenomenal, especially for just equality and for females in sports. He inspired so many females. Obviously, his daughter was a really good basketball player, and she was still so many years away from like the WNBA or something. But Kobe inspired so many female athletes as well. And I mean, there was a tennis player that dedicated her match to Kobe. There was basketball players that are obviously like, dedicating their success to being inspired by Kobe. So in those books, he used a lot of female characters as well. And he just showed that everything is possible.
Yeah, and actually, I want to give out a fun fact. This is how hard he worked. So Kobe Bryant, right? He wrote 10 books. Half of them, five of them were bestsellers books.
That's insane. I mean, again, authors work their whole lives to get a bestseller. And you know what? Kobe took advantage of his platform. Kobe took advantage of his hard work, dedication, the connections that he had. He was a very smart businessman. He had a lot of really smart investments that he did financially. And then he also used his creativity with his short film, with his books, with what he was doing at the Mamba Academy. He was all in on his life after basketball, and I was even more impressed. I followed him on social media. I just wanted to know what was Kobe doing next because he was just full of surprises.
Yeah. And before we go, I have one more question to ask you.
Yeah.
So Kobe's hard work, I know you already said the hard work that you put in as an author, but Kobe's hard work on being a father, a husband, basically everything he does. Did that inspire you to put more than 100% in the things that you do?
Yeah, and it starts there. It starts with being a father and being a family man. Uh, I think what Kobe taught a lot of people, and then you had a pandemic on top of that that kind of forced people to be with their families even more. But Kobe inspired me to be a better father, a better husband. I thought I was already pretty good at both, but I thought you can always be better. You can always be better. You can always improve. You can always do something that helps your family be in a better situation, help your family be successful. So absolutely. I think Kobe the father was so inspiring. I mean, what he did with his daughters, um, from a sports perspective, I mean, you see how I try to coach as many of your sports as possible. I can't wait for your little sister to start playing
Oh,
sports. I'm
yeah.
I'm hoping to that's that's going to be fun. I want to coach as many of those as possible as well. And Kobe's passing just goes to tell you that you could be wealthy, you can be rich, you can have all the money in the world, but at the end of the day, what matters most is your family, and what matters most is the time that you dedicate to creating special moments with the people that you
Yeah.
love. And that's definitely one of my biggest takeaways and one of my biggest inspirations that I got from Kobe
Yeah,
Bryant.
and I think his death taught me how don't take your time with your family, with your friends for granted, because you just never know. Like, you always, want to spend every special moment together with, like I said, your friends or your family, and yeah.
No, that's awesome, buddy. That's awesome. Listen, great job putting this episode together. Again, huge shout out to you. You're doing such a great job with this podcast, and I couldn't be more proud of you. So thank you again for having me, and I love you, buddy. Great job. Thank you
Yeah,
again.
thank you. Well, oh, wait, I also have one more thing to tell you.
Uh-oh.
Guys, get ready, because the next 2 episodes that are coming up in the podcast is going to be the GOAT debate.
Oh
Yeah.
gosh, that could be messy.
Yeah, I mean, the 9th episode is going to be the kids. So we're going to have special guest Lennox. We're going to have some kids, like my friends. And then the 10th episode, we're going to have the adults. So it's going to be like a show for me.
That's going to be interesting. So, oh boy, I'm looking forward to those episodes. That's going to get messy. It's going to get crazy, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be fun.
Yeah, well, thank you for being a special guest today in Hoops R Us, Dad. And hope to have another, have you as a special guest once again.
I appreciate it, buddy. Great job. Thank you again.
All right.